époque. Changements climatiques sont bien réels. Earlier today, I had the chance to sit down with the remarkable young person who's driving this conversation forward, Greta Thunberg. She is the voice of a generation of young people who are calling on their leaders to do more and to do better. And I'm listening. We talked about the fact that in the face of this climate crisis, we must all do more. Things are more urgent now than ever, and young people are counting on us to act. La crise frappe à notre porte et on doit trouver une solution.
And we have to find a solution as quickly as possible, because the longer we wait, the worse things will get. And let's be honest, we have no time to lose. The flooding is threatening thousands of houses. Heat waves are making victims. Fires are destroying our crops and our forests. And the fact is, we're facing a very tough reality. But in the face of a crisis, we're not powerless either. As a country, we have two options. We can just bury our head in the sand, or we can act. We can return to the years of inaction under Harper, or we can choose to go forward. After 10 years of ineffective policies under Harper, the environmental plan was just as non-existent as economic growth. And then Canadians chose a new team, a team prepared to invest in their future. We still have a lot of work to do, but together we've already made a lot of progress. We put a price on pollution, and we are phasing out coal facilities. We have banned harmful single-use plastics and launched a plan to protect our oceans that is world-class.
Some politicians would hit the brakes on this progress. Just look at the track record of the Conservatives. Andrew Scheer wants to cancel our climate plan, offering Canadians the same do-nothing approach as Stephen Harper did. In fact, he has promised the very first thing he would do is make pollution free again. Indeed, the last Conservative finance minister is insisting that climate change is actually a good thing for Canada. And Doug Ford tried to axe tree planting in Ontario, a short-sighted decision not just for our environment, but for the hundreds of seasonal jobs that it puts at risk. Our government put up $15 million to keep that program going because we can't play politics with our kids' future. Mes chers amis,
friends, we have to redouble our efforts and continue to move forward. And if we really want to combat climate change, one of the best ways of doing that is to increase the strength of nature. Today, I am announcing that a Liberal government, if re-elected, will plant 2 billion trees over the next 10 years to ensure we're protecting our environment. If that seems ambitious and bold, well, it is. Those trees will help to absorb carbon in the air, to ensure the quality of the air we breathe for ourselves and our children, but also our grandchildren and their children.
Nature isn't just a part of our identity as Canadians. It's also a part of the solution to climate change. And it's a solution we can start using today. Trees are remarkable. They pull carbon out of the atmosphere. They're renewable and they're sustainable, and eventually they even recycle themselves. All we have to do is plant the first one. So what we're going to do is plant 2 billion trees over the next decade in our cities and in other places that need it, work with Indigenous communities, and support forest regeneration after wildfires. Mais les arbres ne sont qu'un début.
But the trees are just a beginning. Our process is part of our commitment to reinvest $3 billion in order to find solutions to climate change. We are conserving our wetlands, our coasts, and our agricultural lands. Today's announcement represents a major investment to ensure the quality of the air we breathe and create almost 3,500 new seasonal jobs. Because unlike the Conservatives, we know that we can't choose between the environment, a healthy environment, and a strong economy. We are pledging to deliver real change, the kind of change that people who are down in the streets today are demanding. Earlier this week, we announced that a re-elected Liberal government will pledge to reach net zero emissions by 2050. We will increase our nature protection areas and reduce taxes for companies working in the clean tech industries so that Canada can be a leader in that area. We are setting ambitious goals, ambitious targets that are critical, and we have a plan to meet those targets. Friends, Liberals will continue to invest in Canada and Canadians and their future. A new Liberal government will increase access to childcare services and ensure that all Canadians who just had a baby can take a paid family leave. We will lower taxes, administrative fees, and paperwork for PMEs. We will ban assault weapons and increase gun control. We will help you to buy your first home, and we will give more money to seniors in retirement. We will lower taxes for the middle class and people working hard to join it, whereas the Conservatives will give a tax cut to the richest. We will lower your telephone bills, your cell phone bills, and we will ensure that all Canadians have access to a family doctor and mental health services and affordable medications, as well as a national pharmacare program. On October 21st, we all have an important choice to make. Will we go back to the inefficient policies of the past, or will we continue to go forward? That is the choice before us, a clear choice that is of critical importance. I choose forward for everyone.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Philippe Vincent Foisy, Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada.
Tantôt, Greta Thunberg a dit
Now, Greta Thunberg said earlier that you're not doing enough for the environment, and she said it was a disgrace for you to declare a climate emergency at the same time you bought a pipeline. Others are saying you're not going to hit your target. So what do you have to say to the demonstrators who are down in the street now about the inaction on the part of the government? Well, first of all, I recognize, and I said this directly to Greta, that we have to do more. That's why we have set ambitious targets for the next steps, protecting 25% of our land and our oceans between now and 2025, investing in clean technology and clean energy, protecting nature and using nature by planting 2 billion trees to protect against climate change. And with respect to the pipeline, we pledged that all the profits from that pipeline would be reinvested in the fight against climate change. That's a very different choice from the Conservatives. And in fact, that is the choice that people are facing in this election. A government that has an ambitious plan, that recognizes we have to do more and will do more, or the Conservative Party that refuses to admit that this is a priority, that it's a priority to fight climate change and prefers to hide today. They're not there with the demonstrators, and they're not there on climate change either. It's a mistake.
In my wonderful conversation with Greta this morning, we talked directly about the need to do more, much more. I thanked her for the amount of people that her call to action has mobilized. Young people here in Montreal, across the country and around the world. who are saying, yes, governments need to do more. We've done a lot, but we are going to do more. That's why we've put forward ambitious targets to protect 25% of our land, 25% of our oceans until 2025. We know that we can do more by planting 2 billion trees and using the power of nature to fight climate change. We're investing in zero-emission technologies and helping homeowners with more money up front so they can retrofit their homes, save money, and fight climate change. Yes, there's more to do, and we are doing it. And we made the decision that on the pipeline, all the profits will be invested in the fight against climate change, because that's what Canadians expect. That's a different choice than Conservatives are making. And that's the choice facing Canadians right now. A government that has done a lot on climate change and is extremely ambitious in our plans to do more with all Canadians, or a party that refuses to even admit that climate change is a problem. Andrew Scheer is choosing to hide today instead of participating in climate marches. But it's no surprise he's not showing up for the climate march, because he's not showing up for the fight against climate change. That's the choice facing Canadians right now.
At the same time, Mr. Trudeau, right now we're not meeting the targets and there's no plan. And at the same time, you're setting even more ambitious targets, but you still haven't said how we're going to meet those targets. And people are saying, stop talking and start acting, and that is addressed to you as well. Well, in the last 4 years, we have come 3/4 of the way towards meeting the targets we set or had agreed to, whereas the Conservatives had done nothing. So even in 4 years, we've done a lot, and we will continue to move forward. Today's announcement involving the planting of trees and protecting vulnerable ecosystems will make it possible to reduce 30 megatons of emissions by 2030. We know that we're on the right track, but I also acknowledge that there is more to be done, and we will do it. And that's the choice for Canadians in this election. The Conservatives don't want to do anything on climate change, but we understand that we have to fight climate change for the environment, but also for the economy.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. I'm wondering if you can tell us about the tone of your meeting with Ms. Thunberg. Did she speak to you? Was she as critical, as strong-worded as she was at the UN?
She was tremendously passionate about the fight she's engaged in, and I thanked her directly. I've been a politician for over 10 years now, and I have seen Canadians across the country talking about how important it is to protect the environment, but successive governments of many different stripes not do enough to act concretely on that. And what we see now is a mobilization of young people, of citizens across the country who are demanding more action on climate change. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I talked about the challenge we're facing around the world of needing to do more with the support of people right across the country and around the world. And I was extremely pleased with both the tone, the thoughtfulness, and the approach she has to challenge all of us to do more, including me.
You've been in power for 4 years. What's it like to face a 16-year-old who says you haven't done enough?
I agree with her entirely. We need to do more. And that's why the ambitious plans we've laid out all week that have been criticized by some as too ambitious, are not too ambitious, are necessary. We know that the time to act is now. We need to do more, and that's exactly what we're laying out as a plan to do. And the contrast and the choice, again, in this election, is between a government committed to doing much more in the fight against climate change, or a Conservative Party that refuses to understand that it is the great fight of our time. They refuse to show up to the marches. They refuse to show up for the fight. Andrew Scheer is busy hiding from this, while Canadians are out there demanding greater action, and we are there for that.
Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. when you announced you were buying TMX, she called it shameful. How does that square? You're going to see protesters saying those same things today. Someone at a rally you had the other night said that that you were throwing fuel on the fire with the purchase of TMX.
We have a national climate plan that will reduce our emissions and hit our 2030 targets in a way that also includes getting a better price for our oil resources that allows us to put the profits directly into the fight against climate change. That is what we recognize. We need to move forward, and the choice between a conservative government that does not think that we need to act on climate change and a Liberal Party and a Liberal government that is both acting on climate change and making sure that we're managing the transition and economic growth right is exactly what people are talking about. That's the choice they're facing, and that's what I'm going to continue to stand strongly for. Moving forward in a way that both protects our environment and ensures a better future for all generations.
And can Mr. Guilbeault also speak, or is it just...
Of course. I'm happy to have him talk about this today.
Mr. Guilbeault, I was wondering if you could come to the microphone. Do you see policies that your party's put forward as meeting the 2030 targets? Many experts say you are going to fall short. Does the carbon tax need to go higher in order for the Liberal Party to meet the 2030 targets?
Well, two things I'd like to say. First, for $1 that the party has the government has invested in the pipeline, they've invested 15 in the fight against climate change. On October 21st, when I announced that I was running for the Liberal Party, I challenged anybody to show me a government that has done more in 4 years than this government. And since June 21st, no one has answered my challenge. So, is it perfect? No, but have we done more than anybody else? Absolutely. And the plan, I mean, the measures that have been adopted so far takes us to 75% of where we need to be in 4 years. Our 20 target are not for 2019 or 2020, they're for 2030. So we have 11 more years to make up the 25% that's missing for the plan. Is it doable? Absolutely. And we've announced this week that we would go even beyond the 2030 targets that we have right now.
Does the carbon tax need to go up?
We'll have to see. I mean, there are many measures. People seem to think that carbon tax will fix everything. It's one of many tools that can be used in the fight against climate change. The government has adopted more than 50 measures in the last 4 years. Carbon pricing is one of them, but there are so many other things that can be done.
And thank you, Stephen. But to answer that question directly, we have a plan that increases the price on pollution every year until 2022. And in 2022, well, we get an election in 2023 to talk about the next steps of our plan. We recognize that there are a lot of things we need to do, from a price on pollution to planting 2 billion trees, to protecting 25% of our land and our oceans, to moving forward on zero-emission technologies, to helping Canadians retrofit their homes with more money up front that's going to let them do it and save money. There are many, many things we need to do, and that's what we're going to continue to focus on, and that's what Canadians need to understand is at stake in this election, between continuing to move forward on fighting climate change or going back to an approach that the Conservatives want that does absolutely nothing.
Karina Roman, CBC News. During this campaign, you've met with Bianca Andreescu, now with Greta Thunberg this morning. An opportunity you might not have had if you were leader of the second party or the third place party going into an election. What do you say to people who say it's taking advantage of your position and it's unfair during an election campaign?
These are important moments for Canada to celebrate sporting victories, to celebrate moments we're moving forward, or to talk about the important choice we're making about how we move forward on fighting for a cleaner environment, how we protect our children's future. This is something that I have been consistent about from well before I was ever Prime Minister, and I'm going to continue to work with, to talk with, to engage with leaders from around the world on the big issues that matter to Canadians. That's what people expect of me, and I will always do that.
Morgan Lowry, Canadian Press. Ms. Thunberg and others are saying it's not just time to act on climate change, it's time to panic, it's time to be terrified. Do you agree that Canadians need to be terrified, or do you think that kind of anxiety is harmful?
I think Canadians need to understand how serious this situation is, and I think millions of Canadians already do. From seeing the increased wildfires, to the droughts, to the floods, to the heat waves that are deadly in cities like Montreal and Toronto and elsewhere, we know that the time to act is now and the need to act is now. And that's exactly why we're putting forward a strong and ambitious plan, yes, a very ambitious plan, to fight climate change and protect future generations. But I also know we can do it. The zero-emission economy is going to be trillions of dollars worth of economic opportunities for Canadians that we're going to be part of because of our decision to cut taxes in half for the most innovative companies in zero-emission technologies. We know that Canadians themselves want to do more, can do more in retrofitting their homes. That's why we're giving more money up front, not just to homeowners, but to renters as well, so that they can actually make the investments they need to save money and protect our future. We're protecting 25% of our land areas and water areas by 2025, pushing up to 30% by 30, because it is an essential part of building a stronger future to make sure that nature is protected and part of the fight, which is why we're also investing in 2 billion trees, because scientists say that planting 2 billion trees is a significant way to continue the fight against climate change. But we recognize there's more to do, and we're going to continue to do more. And that choice couldn't be clearer for Canadians right now, between Conservatives who don't want to do a thing to fight climate change, or a government that has demonstrated more leadership than any previous Canadian government and is right there to do even more.
Salima Shivji, CBC News. So a lot of promises this week, not that many details on how to get there, as well as the costing is from your party and not the PBO. So there have been a lot of questions about that. Ahead of the first debate that you're going to attend next week, I'd like to know if you're going to release your platform with full costing before the TVA debate next week.
The platform fully costed, as we did last election, this time with the extra help that the Parliamentary Budget Officer is giving to all parties to make sure that costing is exactly right, will be out before the TVA debates.
Thank you.
We will be sharing our platform as well as a full costing for all of these initiatives in cooperation with the Parliamentary Budget Office, and that will come out before the debate next week.
Justin Ling, freelance. Mr. Trudeau, you just said this week that you're very confident that the work you've done on the opioid crisis has had a huge impact. Of course, thousands of people are still dying. A lot of experts, academics, researchers say the only way to go forward is to stop criminalizing personal drug use. You've resisted that call. Your former health minister says that's because you don't believe the polling is there. You think the polling is bad around that issue. How do you justify kind of ignoring the people who are most on the front lines of this issue?
The opioid crisis is a national public emergency that is devastating families and communities right across the country. And I have met with families affected by this. I have sat down with frontline workers and scientists and experts who are dedicated to continuing this fight and to doing all we can to help more Canadians. Our approach is based on treatment, on harm reduction, on safe consumption, on measures of destigmatization that have been proven to work. And the contrast is very clear between, again, a Conservative government putting all that under threat because they don't want to respect the science and they don't believe in supervised consumption or harm reduction. So again, the choice is there. And we're going to continue to base our decisions on science and making sure we are giving Canadians all the help we possibly can.
Of course, the researchers say the science supports more action on supply, and your supply strategies have only helped a few hundred people. So why, again, if you're saying you believe in science, why aren't you listening to the researchers who are producing the science?
We are continuing to base our decisions on science. We're continuing to increase supervised consumption and harm reduction. We're continuing to increase the measures around supply that are making a very real difference. We know there's more to do, and we're committed to doing it.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. I want to ask you about the announcement yesterday to give $2,000 bursaries to low-income families to go to national parks. Isn't it not a little bit paternalistic to tell families that are struggling financially, here's $2,000, but you have to use it to go on a camping trip?
We have, when we took office, there was a Learn to Camp program that had about 10,000 people go through it every year. We thought this was a good program run by Parks Canada, so we put a little more money in it, and the numbers ballooned up over 100,000 people. During Canada 150, when we gave free access to our national parks, the numbers of Canadians who visited our national parks exploded right across the country. We know that families increasingly want to have opportunities with their families to get out there, discover, enjoy our nature, and we want to raise a new generation of young people who understand how important nature is in the fight against climate change, in building a stronger future. This is a program and an approach that has been roundly supported by the families who've been able to participate in it, and we want to make sure that more families who want these opportunities have the opportunity to do that.
Hi, Allegra Mendelson, the McGill International Review. While you've stated that profit from the pipelines and the LNG plant will go towards fighting climate change, it's still unclear as to how this will help Indigenous populations. What specifically will you do to protect and promote the First Nations communities, specifically those who will be impacted by the pipeline?
First of all, we recognize that there are a wide range of perspectives on this pipeline project. There are Indigenous communities who have real concerns and are opposed to it. There are Indigenous communities who are positive about it, who want to be part of it, even want to become owners of the pipeline project. So we're going to work with all Indigenous communities, both to allay those fears, but also to move forward in partnership so the benefits of our development of natural resources ends up supporting and helping the people who have been stewards of this land for millennia.
Oui, Guillaume Bourgault-Côté du Devoir, 2 milliards d'arbres, vous dites.
2 billion trees you're talking about. I'd like to know what percentage of emissions will go down or will be affected by this. Well, first of all, the increase in emissions from TMX is negligible because this is a pipeline that will take oil that otherwise would be carried by rail or by truck. And it's part of a plan where Alberta has put an absolute cap on the increase of its greenhouse gas emissions. But we understand that planting trees will reduce by 30 megatons our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and we know that this is a step in the right direction. But you say it's negligible. What actual effect will planting those trees have? Well, we will show that planting these trees will have a real and tangible effect on lowering greenhouse gas emissions across the country. La Presse, you are going to be, could you speak up, please? You are going to be participating in the march with young people who are dreaming of a better future. You're promising planting trees and also building a pipeline. How do you explain that? Well, we're in a period of transition where we have to invest more to counter climate change and protect our nature. At the same time, create ecosystems that will allow us to fight climate change. And that's what we're doing. We recognize that there's always more to be done, and that's exactly what we'll do. The choice is clear in this election between a Conservative Party that wants to do a lot less and a Liberal Party that knows we have to continue to act. And now I have to go and join those young people to demonstrate with them for a better world. Thank you very much.